Over the past year, few currencies have done worse than Russia's ruble. Last September, an American dollar bought just over 60 of them. These days, it will buy almost 100. The drop is both a symbolic blow to ordinary Russians who equate a strong currency with a strong country and the cause of tensions in the Russian state. It has blown apart the consensus that exists among Russians policymakers last year, when the central bank and finance ministry worked hand in glove. Now, as inflation rises and growth slows, the two institutions are turning against one another. At stake is the country's ability to wage war effectively. During the conflict early stages, Russian officials had a straightforward task. It was their job to stop the economy collapsing. Immediately after the invasion began, this involved preventing people from pulling money out of the financial system by implementing capital controls and doubling the policy interest rate. The ruble hit 135 to the dollar before recovering. The economy nosedived and then improved, funded by juicy revenues from sales of oil and gas. The finance industry then kept the show on the road by lavishing spending on defense and welfare. Strong oil and gas exports also caused the ruble to appreciate, lowering import prices and in turn inflation. This allowed the central bank to accommodate fiscal expansion, cutting interest rates to below where they had been on the eve of the invasion. Over the course of 2022, consumer prices rose by 14% and real GDP declined by 2%, a weak performance, but miles better than the forecaster had predicted. Last year, Vladimir Putin noted that the recovery stage for the Russian economy is finished. The new stage of the economic war presents officials with tough choices. Mindful of a presidential election in March, the finance ministry wants to support the economy. Bloomberg, a news service, has reported that Russia is planning to increase defense spending from 3.9% to 6% of GDP. The finance ministry also wants to raise social security spending. Mr. Putin is keen to run the economy hard. He recently boasted about Russia's record low unemployment rates, calling it one of the most important indicators of the effectiveness of our entire economic policy. Conscription and immigration no doubt helped. Yet the central bank is no longer keen to assist. The problem starts with the ruble. It is sliding in part because business folk are pulling money from the country. Low oil prices for much of this year have also cut the value of exports. Meanwhile, Russia has found new sources of everything from microchips to fizzy drinks. Resulting higher imports have raised demand for foreign currency, cutting the ruble's value. A falling currency is boosting Russian inflation as the cost of these imports rises. So is the fiscal stimulus itself, warned Elvira Nabiullina, the central bank's governor, in a recent statement. Consumer prices rose by 5.5% in the year to September, up from 4.3 in July. There are signs of second-round effects in which inflation today leads to more tomorrow. Growth in nominal wages is more than 50% its pre-pandemic rates, even as productivity growth remains weak. Higher wages are adding to companies' costs, and they're likely to pass them on in the form of higher prices. Inflation expectations are rising. This has forced Mrs. Nabulina to act. In August, the central bank shocked markets, raising rates by 3.5 percentage points and then by another percentage point a month later. The hope is that higher rates entice foreign investors to buy rubles. Raising the cost of borrowing should also dampen domestic demand for imports. But higher rates create problems for finance ministry. Slower economic growth means more joblessness and smaller wage rises. Higher wages also raise borrowing costs, hitting mortgage holders as well as the government itself. Last September, Last December, the Finance Ministry decided it was a good idea to rely more heavily on variable rate debt, just as borrowing costs began to rise. In August, conscious of higher rates, it then cancelled a planned auction of more debt. Mr. Putin would like to square the circle, defending the ruble without additional rate rises. He has therefore asked his policymakers to find creative solutions. Two main ideas are being explored: managing the currency and boosting energy exports. Neither looks likely to work. Take the currency first. The government is keen to mandate exporters to give up more hard cash and make it harder for money to leave the country. In August, officials started preparing guidelines that would recommend firms return not just sale proceeds but also dividend payments and overseas loans. On September 20th, Alexei Moiseev, the deputy finance minister, hinted that capital controls were being considered to stem outflows for every country, even those deemed friendly. Such measures are at best imperfect. Russia's export industry formed powerful lobbies. The experience of the last 18 months is that the firms which dominated energy, farming, and mining are skilled at poking loopholes in currency controls, says Vladimir Milov, a deputy energy minister in the early days of Mr. Putin's reign. Waivers and exemptions abound. In late July, Mr. Putin issued a decree allowing exporters operating under governmental agreements, which cover a big chunk of trade in China, Turkey, and others, to keep process offshore.